This is Pod Populi,
podcast for the people.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Femme Force Podcast. My name is Rachel Pascan, and I am your host. And today I'm here with Urmi, who's going to be talking to us about mentorship for women in finance and all about her book, Discovering Identity, which I have now read and was phenomenal, all about self-acceptance and kind of getting away from societal expectations and the power of really just embracing one's identity and embracing oneself, which is so pertinent to women. It's so pertinent to everyone at some stage of their life. So I'm just so excited for you to be here and to be able to talk about this.
Well, thank you for having me, Rachel.
So, can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself and a background about you, kind of like where you are now?
Yes, it will be my pleasure. So I am based in Montreal. I am originally from Italy. I was born and raised in Italy, and I have Bengali origins. I work, like you mentioned, in the financial sector, like I'm a woman in finance,
Mhm.
and I do have a lot of passions. I am a self-published author, mentor, blogger, YouTuber, and a big advocate of women's empowerment. In my free time, I do dedicate a lot of my time to give back, especially giving back to communities of women, and try to use my time also, my time and my knowledge to mentor the women in these communities.
Which I think is so important, especially in male-dominated industries. Because I mean, they say like you break the glass ceiling, but then you need someone to like pull you up and put you at the table, which is always a huge thing. And having women that are willing to not just mentor, but like literally be like, you can sit next to me, like you deserve a spot here, I think is
Yeah.
huge. And it's the only way we're going to really get ahead.
Yes, and this is why like I joined Women in Leadership, which is an organization based in Canada, and we basically have like ch 7 chapters across Canada. And basically, like I am based in Montreal, but I volunteer for the one in Victoria. And basically,
Mhm.
the whole goal or purpose of this organization is to really empower the women in the community. Like it's really to help women to advance in those career in those leadership positions.
Mhm.
And we provide them with the tools such as mentorship program, or let's say leadership development program. Or we also have like webinars, workshop, career fair. We have like meetups where, we have all these women coming together, exchanging knowledge and information.
Yeah. And I think that's what we need. We need more organizations like this. Like we need more things like that. And then you're in a male-dominated industry. Like finance is predominantly male. It's male, not just dominated, but male viewed as well. So, how did you get started and ended up in finance?
So how I get started, it's a question that many people ask me,
Mhm.
because let me tell you this, like 15 years ago when I was in high school, like it never crossed my mind to be in finance. Like finance
Yeah.
was, it never crossed my mind. Like literally, I never even heard the word finance. Then I started university and I was not majoring in finance. I had finance as my minor, and I
Okay.
had another major which I did not like. I actually disliked that major a lot. And so then what happened is I took a finance course, and I re realized how much I was in love with it. And because it started from that one class where I totally fell in love with, this is what I was like, you know what, I want to do this. I want to do finance. I want to study finance. And I enjoyed very much, going to classes, taking exams. Studying finance was like, it was effortless for me. And then, like many people, like, of course, you want to study, like, you want to work in what you studied, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I ended up like working in a financial company. And I worked in different sectors. Like, I worked like in compliance, I worked in like client support, and now I'm working in portfolio management. But you know what? Like, when I started studying finance, and I continue to, accumulate knowledge and get a lot of designation in finance, I had an end goal in my mind, which was, I want to work in portfolio management. And this is when I realized, that finance is not male dominated. It was when I
Yeah.
started to work. But then, even when I was in university, when I think about it, even in my classroom, there were not that many women. we were like a
No.
very small group of girls, taking finance as a major. And that's when I started to realize, oh my gosh, finance is so male dominated. And I see it even now that I work, that it's very
Yeah.
much male dominated. And I see also like female coworkers who are, who've been there for a long time, that they're always trying to prove themselves because they're not viewed on the same level as the male counterparts. It's hard to work in a very male dominated industry.
Yeah, it's super hard. And what are some of the challenges that, like, for finance specific, that you felt coming into this industry and that you've had to deal with?
There are a lot of things. Let me tell you, because I feel like when you're new in the industry, you're not quite sure like how do you navigate these things. But luckily, the good thing is that a lot of companies they have like mentorship program, and I was lucky enough to also have female managers. And so I
Oh,
would
wow.
always use like those I would say connections, or me having a direct manager who's a female to ask questions. Like I had this particular like manager, she was female, and every time I was like, struggling with stuff, and I was sharing like, my thoughts about how do I do this, how do I navigate this challenge, it's very male dominated and stuff like that. I would always go to her for advice. And I feel like having like a female manager really helped because I was comfortable enough to talk
Yeah,
about
your
my issues
struggles.
or the
Mhm.
challenges that I had. But I also had like mentors who were men. And
Yeah.
I also liked having that perspective because I feel like, from like having the men perspective, you're able to understand a little bit like how they think. And so that helped as well. So I had a little bit of balance. So basically I used internal connection in the company to, have some guidance, have like a clear idea of like how do I do things, little things such as asking for a promotion or, work on like on a project or maybe have, salary adjusted and things like that. Like these were things I was never comfortable talking about because I was like, I don't know how to start the
Well, yeah,
conversation.
they don't teach you that. That's
Yeah,
not a class you learn in
no, no
school.
one teaches you that. So having like female, managers or male mentors really helped me with that.
And I think that's amazing. And going into mentorship, like, how important do you think it is for someone to find a mentor? And like, what are the qualities they should be looking for, especially for women? Like, how are they looking for a mentor and seeking them out? And it's hard. It's hard. Just like, you don't normally just go up to them and be like, "Hi, you want to be my mentor?" Like, how do you do that?
So let me tell you this thing. I think every one of us is a mentor. We're just not, we just don't realize it. Like I can be your mentor, you can be my mentor. Like I always think that it's never about, the title of your job or a certain position. It's more about, the experience and the value that you can bring to the other person.
Yeah,
And there's this concept, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called friendtor. I don't know if you ever heard
no,
it.
I've never heard of this.
It's a combination of friend and mentor because I had a lot of mentors, but I had this one particular colleague who was not my mentor. She was my friender because she was my friend and my mentor. And I always said that if you're seeking for a mentor, maybe your friend, the person that you've been like hanging out for a long time, is your mentor, but you just do not realize it. So I feel like our own friends could be our mentor. Like it's not really hard to look for one, like
Yeah.
I think it's yes, there is a formal relationship, but before that there is a human connection, that there is a genuine connection between two people, which makes a mentor relationship much better. And I think that some of the qualities of a mentor are that, this person is there for you when you have any like questions. You as a mentee, you want to make sure that you're proactive, that you reach out, that you have a clear idea of the things that you want to do, or that, even if you don't have a clear idea, like there are things that are in your mind and you just need someone to talk to. And I think friends are the greatest, mentors that you can ever have.
I mean, friendship sounds like the smartest thing in the world. And now that I think about it, I'm like, I have a lot of frienders. I have a lot of like, I take advice from a good portion of my friends, and like, they're all phenomenal in what they do, and they offer advice for free too. So can never go wrong with the free advice portion of things.
Yeah.
How do you feel though while you're having a mentor? Has it had a significant impact on your career? And do you have any moments that have really stuck out to you where you're like, this, I got this and I understood this because I had that mentor?
So, the female manager that I was talking to
Yeah.
you about, like she was never formally my mentor, but I always saw her as my mentor.
Yeah.
And the reason why I always saw her as my mentor is because I looked up to her. Like she was my true inspiration. Like I remember seeing her talking to people, very eloquent, very sophisticated, very elegant. And I always remember like every time I was speaking to someone, she would come to my mind. Like this is how I wanted to be portrayed as well. And having her had a really like having her in my life made a huge difference. She probably doesn't know that, I think, but it made a huge difference for me
Yeah.
because I feel like I saw her as my inspiration, as an example. So I acted accordingly. I started to take public speaking, I started to attend public speaking
Yeah.
clubs. I started to pursue like designation in finance because I would ask her questions about, how do I, become better at my job, or how can I make sure that I am valuable in the market. So she would tell me like all these things to do. And that's how I feel like she made a huge, huge, huge impact in my life. Like I still see her nowadays. But she was very, very charismatic. I think that was one thing that I admired about her is that she had a very charismatic personality. And I feel like it makes a huge difference when you are in a room with a charismatic
Yeah.
person. So that's how I aim to be.
That's amazing. I mean, and it's true. Like you can be, there's something about dating, and there's a quote where they're like, you don't have to be the prettiest in the room. You have to be the one that's having the most fun. Like
Yeah.
that's the one that everybody wants to go around is the person that's having the most fun in the room. Better look up that thing and I'll send it to you. But it's about dating, but it can apply here too, I guess.
Yeah.
When it comes to navigating finance and like being a woman in finance, how do you see your career trajectory? Like are there any females that are really at like the top of their game? I literally just watched the Martha Stewart documentary and found out that Martha Stewart was on Wall Street, like did not know that, any of that, and she was like the only woman, and that was in the 1960s. So how does it look now for different companies and for the industry in general?
Well, let me tell you, I think I see some changes, but I see some like slow changes. Like I feel like the journey is still very long. It's still
Yeah.
very long. There are certain roles that are still very much male dominated. And I still see a little bit of a disparity. Like I still see that there is like a smaller percentage of women going for a certain role. And I think it's because, at some point our priorities change, our objectives, goals change. And I think that's what's probably blocking us. But I definitely see myself like, I want to be an example for other women. So like I
Yeah.
want to stick to this. Like I see myself growing, like advancing in my role. I see myself like going in higher position, and I want to go towards that path, but at the same time, you know, um, like I want to go towards that, but it's also because it's a passion of me, like I
Yeah.
love being in finance. I love studying finance. I love working in finance. So I feel like things are aligned for me, and I'm probably like I'm an outlier, I would say. Like I feel like not many people can say that. So I'm probably an outlier who's like, have things like aligned and like they're like perfectly married to me. But I see myself like working towards that. Like I do want to break the glass ceiling, like
Yeah.
you said. And it's like I'm a very like ambitious, and I'm like a go-getter. So I like to make changes.
I love that. And what would be your advice for other women, or just like a elevator pitch of like you should be in finance, like you can do this too?
My elevator pitch about that. Um, Let me see. So there is a quotation that I very much
Mhm.
like, which says that oh my gosh, it says everything you want to do is on the other side of the fear.
Oh,
And I
that's
feel
good.
like as a woman, as a woman, we're always like we feel like we're first of all, we're like underrepresented, we undervalue ourselves, and that there is this whole issue with imposter syndromes.
Yep.
We feel like we're not good enough, and sometimes we also let fear stopping us from achieving our things. But I always say that if you go on the other side of the fear, there are like beautiful things waiting for you. There is so much growth and potential. There are things that you can achieve that you're not aware of. So it's really
Yeah.
having that courage to really like be an advocate for yourself, to believe in yourself, and to go towards that and like conquer your fear so that you can, achieve the best version of yourself.
That's such a great quote, and I love that. No, that makes complete sense. And diving into another thing that you have done, you wrote a book like a whole book, which is huge. I don't think people know it is not easy to write a book. It is a huge accomplishment. So, first off, congratulations. What motivated you to write this book, Discovering Identity?
So I believe in the power of like sisterhood, okay? So I was inspired by another self-published author because I read one of her books. And then I reached out to her on, I think, LinkedIn, and I said, "Oh, how did you write this book?" Like, and then when I read her book, I felt like she was telling my story. Like I just felt like she was living my story. So that's why I reached out to her. And then she was like, "Oh, it's super easy. Like you just have to like write down your thoughts and have a draft, have like content, and then you just upload it on like you just still publish it on Amazon. Like there is like a section on Amazon where you can self-publish that." And
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
that's how I came the idea because I always wanted to like write a book, but I didn't want to go through that, hustle of finding like a publisher and things like that. And luckily I had like good connections with people that also self-publish books, and they gave me like guidance. They were like, "Oh, there is a book called How to Write a Book in 30 Days. Just read that and it will give you a little bit of like a guide on how to write the book." And that's how I would say that the whole process started. So it was really by connections, by a lot of getting inspired by other people. Then I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And it was easy for me. It was easy for me because it was sort of like a memoir, like it's just me writing about my childhood, my teenagehood. So it was like very therapeutic at the same time.
That's amazing. And the basis of this, so what are the main themes? I mean, I know, and I read you include growing up as a culture like in Italy, but with Bengali parents. And so, what made you want to really focus on some of the South Asian struggles from a female point of view?
So basically, back when I wrote the book, basically I was invited to go to different podcasts,
Mhm.
and everyone was always so interested in my multiple cultural background.
Yeah,
They were always fascinated by the fact that I was like Bengali, Italian. Then I was like, you know what, this could be like a good topic of a book. And there is this concept called third culture kids, which is like what I am. Like I'm a third culture kid because I'm born in a certain third country. I grew up in another country. Actually, I grew up in multiple countries, and my parents come from another country. And so, like, I am a fusion of different cultures. Like, I know
yeah,
I mainly speak about Italian Bengali, but I had exposure to other cultures, and
yeah.
now there is also the Canadian side. And I felt like, this could like an interesting topic. And when I started to write that, I realized that there's so many people like me in this world who go through the same struggle.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a little bit of hard time answering the question, where are you from? And I used to think it was just me. But no, there are so many people out there. Like on Instagram,
Mhm.
I saw a community of their culture kids like struggling in finding their cultural identity. But then I also wanted to add that South Asian part, like the about being a
Yeah.
South Asian woman, because there is another layer of complexity with that, meaning that, when you're a South Asian woman, there are like a lot of double standards. Like there are in other cultures as well, but it's very like prominent. I feel like, there's so many like limiting beliefs that are told us like you cannot do this, you cannot do that. And I wanted to speak more about that because I think you want to make sure that your story is being heard, but you also want to make sure that other people around you feel like they're not alone in this journey. So I feel like a lot of South Asian women could relate to this story.
A
So
thousand percent. I mean, and it's number one, it's South Asian women. That's a huge population. So there's not just you that's out there thinking about this. Like there's so many
yeah,
other women that have to be going through this. I had never heard the term third culture kid, which I thought was so interesting. And then when you dove into it in the book, I was like, wait, there's so many people that are like this. Like,
yeah,
thank God there's a term for this. Like this makes sense.
yeah, yeah. There
And
are a
so,
lot of people like that. Yes. It
yeah.
and if And you know what? I did not come across that like term when I was living in Italy, but I
Mm.
also feel like it wasn't because I did like there are only mainly Italian people there.
Yeah.
It was after I moved to Canada that I feel like I started to see a little bit more of of those kind of people. This is what I started to hear the first, like the word her culture kid. So it was just after I came to Canada.
That's phenomenal. And I mean, you're moving to Canada from Italy, like Bengali to all of the such different cultural backgrounds. What were the challenges of like starting out living in Italy, where the reputation of your South Asian community is going to be less just because it's going to be dominated by Italian?
Yeah, you know what? Like, let me tell you this, living in Italy was great.
Yeah.
It was great. Like, and here's the thing, like I lived in Italy for like 20 years now. I moved to Canada and I go back to Italy,
Mhm.
but I see a difference now. Like being a citizen of the country versus being a visitor of the
Visitor.
country,
Mhm.
like it's not the same thing. A lot of people now ask me, oh, why did you move from Italy, this and that? Italy is great. But then if you live like in Italy is very different than visiting Italy, like when you
Yeah.
visit the country, there's that enthusiasm, excitement about seeing, a different country. But living in a country, it's especially in Italy, it's tough. Like when I think about it, it's very, very hard to find a job. Like I look at like, people that are getting degrees and stuff like that. Like if they find a job, they're very lucky, but then they stick
Yeah.
to this job until they retire. But the country itself has a lot of issues from like political point of view, economical point of view, social point of view. And I'm glad that I have moved out of it, Like I would like to go back maybe when I'm retiring, but not to live there like right now in this moment of my life. And one thing that I have noticed right now is that when I grew up, there were not that many immigrant people, but
Yeah,
now
I would think.
we
Yeah.
have there's a lot more, and there's a lot more I would say like mixed race people. Like when I was growing up there were not that many, but now I can see that also like in movies that there is a bit more representation. I can see it in reality shows that there is a bit more representation, because before you would like switch on the TV and you will only see like Italian people, but now at least you see a little bit more diversity, which is a good thing. I feel like Italy is moving and progressing, but it's very, very slow
Well,
in that sense. Like I don't think they're ready for like changes.
well, I mean, even in America, there's I would say a skepticism of what is an Italian, and like what we've been fed from the media and from, and from television shows and things like that, like what is an Italian? And so our idea, and I'm sure ideas of children and stuff, until they get the chance, that's why traveling is so important. So you can go and see like there are so many different people that are out there living in these cultures and like having different, they're just different. It's not everything you just see on TV.
But so here's the thing, because like you talked about what is an Italian, like what's an
Mhm.
Italian person, right? So when I moved to Canada and I would tell people that, I'm from Italy, they would just look at me perplexed, like literally they would look at me perplexed, because they were like, oh my gosh, I didn't think you were born in Italy. But then I said, but nowadays you don't need to look Italian to be
Mhm.
Italian. That's what I tell them. And even now, like even yesterday, someone was telling me, oh, I did not expect you're from Italy. And then they were like, oh, when you speak in Italian, you don't have an accent. And I'm thinking, okay, but I'm born and raised in Italy. I hold
Yeah.
Italian citizenship. I don't think I have to like explain you like my whole story about
Yeah.
why I don't have an accent and blah blah blah. But it's hard for people to accept what now Italian people like what it means to be Italian and what it means to look like an Italian person, like it's not always your appearance, it's also the way you speak, the way
Yeah.
you move your hands. It's about expressions and stuff like that, because I also know this other girl who lives in Italy. She's basically her parents are Chinese, okay?
Okay.
But she feels truly Italian. But every time people make comments, they're like, no, but you're Chinese, but she does not feel Chinese. She actually feels Italian.
That's where you're raised. It's all about like where you feel the most you. I mean, you were born there. You did all the things. Just because you have Bengali parents does not mean that you're not Italian. You're Italian.
That's the thing. That's
And
the
that's the
thing.
thing.
So
It's
it's
so interesting.
yeah, and I think for people it's hard sometimes to, accept that reality.
I mean, and but you grew up in Italy. You were there, you said, like over 20 years. How do you feel you kind of brought in your Bengali heritage with an Italian upbringing? Like, was that from your parents? Was it you seeking it out?
No, it was actually my parents. They tried to, preserve that, they wanted to,
Well, that's beautiful,
you
though.
know, they did that, and it was hard. It was hard for me because I always had like Bengali people, like sorry, I always had Italian people around me.
Mhm.
And so I always felt like I was not belonging to either one of the groups, or that I was not fitting in. And so sometimes I used to hate having that second culture, but now that I grew up, like I'm thankful that they gave me that that second identity as well, because I feel like I'm
Yeah.
able to bring an added value. I'm like a little bit of both, and I embrace both equally. So I'm glad about that. But at the beginning, it was so hard, like really hard.
Do you feel like the expectations for you were different, like being Bengali, but growing up in Italy? Like, did you have more South Asian expectations on you, or were your parents like, no, you're European, like these are the things that Europeans do?
No, I had a lot of South Asian expectations. A lot, a lot. Yeah, it was yeah, there was no such thing as like, you're a European, or there's no such thing you're Italian. Like they would always tell me, you're a Bengali girl, you're like Bengali by blood and things like that. But then deep inside I was not agreeing with that,
Yeah,
because I was like, no, it's not true. It's not true. Like if you wanted me to be strictly Bengali, you would have not moved from
yeah,
Bangladesh to Italy. You need to have that option open, that if you move to a different country and you like raise a family, that your kids will integrate with the society of that country, And so you cannot expect someone to be just, to follow the culture of your country of origin.
yeah.
So, yeah,
No, because and also they're two very different countries in language and
exactly.
culture. And so, I mean, that's a lot, even on a child. Do you feel like now as an adult, you have your Italian upbringing, but you're closer to your Bengali heritage or more
Um,
appreciative of it?
I would say this is what I say. Like I am a bit of both, and I appreciate both, and I like having both. Like I
Hmm.
definitely embrace them, and I like the idea of being like a fusion of two. And
Yeah.
I can see how I bring both of them in my daily routine,
Hmm.
like like in the like in when I speak, like I speak both of them equally. I speak them all the time, every single day. And then I can see it also in the cuisine sometimes, like I eat a lot of pasta, but you know, it- Bengali cuisine is very much based on like spices and spicy
Yes.
things. And sometimes, I like to make a spicy pasta, which is,
Hmm.
there is a little bit of Italian side, there is a little bit of Bengali side. So I appreciate both equally. I think there is beauty in that, and there is, I see it more like an asset. I used to see it more like a weakness before, because I had really hard time
Yeah.
defining myself from a cultural point of view. But now I just say, I'm Italian Bengali. That's what I say. And I know that I am that. Like I feel like they are very much ingrained in me, and I 100% feel both of them.
I love that. And I think it's just such a beautiful mix. And to be able to be so confident about it also is just so impressive. How do you, or like, what kind of advice would you give to other women who are going through this kind of cultural identity where they're, a mix of things or not really sure where they fall or being pulled in one different direction or another?
So one thing that really helped me was to find more people like me.
Mhm.
Like, when they say like find your tribe in order to
Yes.
strive, or something like that. Um, so I have a friend who is also with she has multiple ethnicity, and talking to her, having like open conversation really helped me to see this from a different light. And because she has different ethnicity, I feel like she could relate to me. Like I feel like we were able to relate to each other's struggles and through each other's challenges. And having that kind of, environment or like community does really help you to um open up to other people. Because I feel like if you don't have, that kind of environment, you will not feel understood. So having open conversation, open dialogues, finding people like you really help to basically go through the struggles.
And do you know any other Bengali Italian women? Have you met any?
Yes. Yes, I
Amazing.
mean in Italy we had a small community of like Bengali Italian people, but I don't think everyone went through my same journey because I
Yeah.
think some of them they lean more towards the Bengali side. So they consider like on paper they're probably Italian, but I don't think they feel Italian. So
Yeah.
it's also about deciding what you want to be.
No, and I mean, it's just so beautiful to have that like mix and that you're representing for both. And like, how do you break out of just being like, I'm a Bengali Italian woman into kind of being your own self, where it's not just that's not your only part of your identity, but there's other things involved with you.
How do you?
Yeah, how do you feel that you break out from like the cultural expectations, but like while also staying close to knowing that you're a Bengali Italian woman? So when you go into work and you're like, this isn't the only thing about me. I have all of these other things about me. You're like, I am a Bengali Italian woman, but I have all of these other things.
I would say it's been mainly through my work and through my actions, like there is my identity about being a Bengali Italian like
Yeah,
person, but I also have other passions as well. And I feel like when there is like an opportunity, whether it's like internally or externally, I chase that. I chase that because I want to show up myself as my most authentic self, and I want people to know that side of me. Like outside of work, I do a lot of things, and I'm sure people can see that if they just Google me, like I have all these
yeah,
passions. But now I study to do that even internally, like if there are events like International Women's Day, and there's like a chance for you to tell your story, I go and chase that because I want people to know, a little bit of about me, that I am a very ambitious girl, that, I go for things because it is not just that identity, like I can
yeah,
bring other values. And doing these things, I also try to be an example for other women. Like it's not just women of color or women having different ethnicity, but it's just for women in general. Like get out of your comfort zone by doing these things. Because I know it can be really hard sometimes. You don't want to be judged by people, then you start overthinking about yourself. You don't feel sure about what you're able to bring. But it's about taking those small baby steps.
yeah.
Just take one action at a time, and then and those things they start to help you to build confidence. So that's how I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone.
And do you have any tips for the listeners on kind of how can they find a sense of identity and make that empowering for themselves in both their personal and professional life?
So let me tell you, I do a little bit of journaling, and I think like
Awesome.
writing down your thoughts really help you to get a little bit of clarity. So that's one thing. And another thing that I have been doing a lot is also, like reading a lot of books, especially like books that are about, self-growth, self-development, or personal development. They really help me to, feel encouraged to get out of my comfort zone. Like I've read so many self-development books that really help me to, get some advice, tips, and also finding the right group of people. Because, you will find people that are not cheering for you.
Yeah.
And it's always good to find, that group of people that are there to support you, willing to listen to you, and who are willing to, give you some advice. Because I'm like lucky enough to be a bit selective. I am selective, especially now that I'm like in my 30s. I'm selective with who I want to spend my time with, how I want to spend my energy, and talking about some of these things with the right people will really help you to move forward. Because when there is like a saying that says you're the average of the five people that you spend your
Yes.
time with.
Hmm.
Um, and there is another expression as well that says, "Show me your friend, and I will tell you who you are."
Yep.
It's very
1000%.
important. It's very important to have the right kind of people around you. Like if you want to be a very confident woman, then surround yourself with confident people. So I think like for people who are like trying to, get things done or accomplish things, I think doing a little bit of those things will really help, like journaling, find the right kind of people, having conversation. I think that will just be like a starting point.
That's amazing. And it's so true. Literally, show me who your friends are. I'll show you who you are. Like it's who all about who you surround yourself with and who you're sitting at the table with and who you pull up to the table and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I have one final question that I ask all of the guests on my podcast. If you could give one piece of advice to your 16-year-old self, what would that be?
Oh man.
It's a hard one.
I would definitely say that, life is like a coaster,
Mhm.
but it's up to you, to navigate the ups and downs of life. And, even though there are bad days, good days will come around. So,
I love that. That's such good advice, though, for now. Like, life is a roller coaster. There's all these things going around. Well, please shamelessly plug where we can find your book, they can find you on Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the things.
yeah, so I have a LinkedIn account which is called Urmi Hossain, and people can connect with me there. I have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. If they want to find out more about women in leadership, they can just type women in leadership like Victoria chapter and find more about us. There is the website, there is the Instagram page. And there is my book, which is available on Amazon. It's called Discovering Your Identity, Every Birth from Interracial Struggle. There is the paper version as well as the Kindle version. So depending on the format that you like, you can order whatever you prefer.
I love that. I was the Kindle girly, so that's how we did that. It's easier to carry around, I've got like 200 books on
Yeah.
one thing. It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think the listeners are going to get so much out of this and just get a better understanding, not just for cultural identity, but about how to kind of promote themselves and like really accept themselves. And I think that's something that they need at every age. It doesn't matter.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.